Last year, I ended the marathon by talking about a game called MarioGame.exe. It was a 2D Mario fan game made entirely in the aptly named Game Maker program. It was buggy, it was dysfunctional, there were no sound effects, the level design was beyond asinine, it basically flew in the face of every single game design paradigm that is expected of a decent video game, and most importantly, it was made by me. As a critic person thingy, I think it's always important to remember that I am no better than any game designer whose work that I decide to criticize, especially at such a holy time of the year. It is very important to remain humble, because that's what Jesus would have done. That's right, y'all. I'm Jesus, the creator of MarioGame.exe. But would you believe that I, Jesus, also made a second game? And not just any kind of game, I'm talking an RPG. And not just any RPG, I'm talking about the greatest RPG of all time, known simply as Robotnik's Mighty Pingers! In case you missed the video on the Five Nights at Fuckboys games, I was inspired to make my own goofy RPG Maker game shortly after playing through all of those. And the second RPG Maker went on sale on Steam. I grabbed it faster than the speed of Sonic. At the time, I was also getting into the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon because of Robotnik's hilarious performance, which I discovered through the endless Pingus memes, so I thought that I would pay tribute to that performance by making an RPG where that specific version of Eggman is the main character. Now, before I show you the contents of this fan game, I need to give a couple of disclaimers. When I started making this, I was in my last year of high school, which means I was a very edgy young man. Additionally, this game is based on a lot of memes that were barely relevant when I was making it and are now beyond irrelevant. Also, the game is nowhere near finished currently. One day that may change, but only if I have ideas that I judge to be funny. And with all of that out of the way, it's time to talk about Robotnik's Mighty Pingus. Robotnik's Mighty Pingus follows Robotnik, or at least some version of Robotnik. For reasons that I have chosen to keep unclear, he's just a head that bobs up and down. The premise is that he wants to find Sonic for literally no other reason than to ruin his day. Along the way, he meets all kinds of strange characters from within and outside of the Sonic universe. He treats every single person he comes across like absolute garbage, to the point that it's like he's incapable of being a decent human being. I wanted to establish his character right out of the gate and keep it as consistent as possible, like Joel in The Last of Us. Which is why right outside his door is somebody selling cookies for cancer research, offering him one in a very sweet, polite manner, and this is his reaction. No! This is what they call in the business a great character moment. This one interaction that happens in a split second tells you everything you need to know about Robotnik as a person. It's not enough that he's mean and cold, he's aggressively against human life to the point that the very idea of his money saving people with cancer sickens him deeply, despite having zero problems at all with dropping all of his money on chili dogs and Sunny D. Robotnik is such an evil bastard that he doesn't even like Sonic games, spitting on the good Sonic game Memorial Park, claiming that there's never been such a thing as a good Sonic game. What a psycho. Having been taking creative writing classes at the time, I wanted to really apply what I had learned to this game. So also, much like The Last of Us, I wanted the dialogue to be very naturalistic. Characters trail off into their own worlds, interrupt each other, and even stop to reconsider their words. The only times where Robotnik helps anybody are when he's going to get something out of it. He speaks to the mayor of St. Sanicsburg, who assigns him the task of picking up his medicine in exchange for info about the whereabouts of the real Sonic. Since I wanted to confront the player with genuine questions about honesty and morality, I gave the player the option of consuming the medicine for yourself to get high. I also included this principle with the snowman that's just sitting around in the forest. I gave the player the option to punch the snowman 3 times in a row. I never indicated that there would be a reward for doing it, it's just something that you can do if you want. But of course, when you do it, it turns out the snowman is alive and he fights back. And of course, I took his fight theme from Earthworm Jim. Robotnik's Mighty Pingus is an example of postmodern video games hiding many social and political themes below layers and layers of irony. such as Robotnik's recurring reckoning with his own sexuality. It also touches on themes of class consciousness by having a blatantly toxic dynamic of Robotnik as Shadow's boss. He even goes as far as to insist that he owns Shadow like a slave. Much like American Psycho, Robotnik is an unreliable narrator and a psychopath, believing himself to be extremely far above everyone else, despite their constant insults and disapproval. He will berate a complete stranger for having a fridge next to a toilet as though he's any better, storing hot dogs in a treasure chest. He even reads an article on the internet listing fun facts about him, and his immediate reaction is to yell at the computer.
What? No!
Robotnik believes himself to be a sort of god, to whom the will of the entire world must bend. I also made this resonate ludonarratively by including broken collision systems so he can just walk through solid objects like any god could do. He is so obsessed with himself that he asks his own diary if it wants to fuck. So not only is he anthropomorphizing an inanimate object, but he's dead certain that it would want to have sex with him. He sees himself as irresistible, despite being a dismembered head hopping around on the ground. He's also unhealthily obsessed with Sonic, for he feels that Sonic completes him, much like the Joker and Batman. Robotnik can never find Sonic though, because he can never know completion, for he is nothing but a head without a complete body. His own mind torments him, making him hallucinate hedgehogs that only give him 5 experience points each. He even has a special move that is substantially worse than his basic attack to demonstrate the true mediocrity of his master plans. Interestingly enough, one of my friends actually asked me if Robotnik's character in this game was a self-insert. Anyway, the game on its surface may appear to be condoning such selfish behavior in the way that it rewards it, but it really is a condemnation. By the end, Robotnik will end up all alone with nobody to blame but himself. A man who only knows how to solve everything with violence and toxicity, inevitably meeting his own end violently and toxically. Of course, I didn't actually write that part yet, but I'm getting there. Now let's talk gameplay. In my first attempts, the game was way too unbalanced, with bosses that take an eternity to kill and enemies that just don't drop enough experience to level you fast. To balance this, I included an item called Beta Test, which instantaneously gives you full experience, making you completely broken. You can also sell it for tens of thousands of pingos. That's the currency of the world, pingos. There were plans to eventually add Tails to the party. That functionality is not present in this build, but the plan was for the two to join forces against Sonic. And this right here is where I'm at a crossroads with the story. Eventually, my brilliant 18-year-old brain had written itself into a corner, stuck between trying to service the themes of the game and trying to write something that made sense and was entertaining. Ideally, those two things should be in balance, and the conversation between subtext and no subtext became a challenging storytelling conflict, and I had to ask myself, what is the story that I want to tell? Do I just want to see Robotnik continue to be a piece of shit for the entire game? Or do I want to see some complex character development where Tails inadvertently digs into his past and brings him out of his husk in the process, a la The Last of Us? Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Robotnik's Mighty Pingus was just a retelling of The Last of Us the entire time. And the conflict became this. Does Robotnik just stay in his own ways, or does he eventually decide to break the cycle of toxicity and violence like Ellie eventually does in The Last of Us 2? This is my roadblock. This is the crossroads, and I know not which way to go. So yeah, that was my RPG. This was a game that I've been sitting on for over half a decade, and all jokes aside, I wouldn't mind completing it once I get a better shape of the story. I went into the development of this game just thinking about how hilarious it would be if Robotnik was just an honest-to-God dickhead with zero respect for life or anything. And I built the game all the way up to Tails working at a water treatment plant asking Robotnik for help. It was here that I experienced writer's block and could not continue, especially as other priorities got in the way. I do occasionally think about how I would complete this game or what ideas could be recycled in other media. But at the end of the day, more than anything, I just wanted to make myself laugh, and perhaps one day, if I ever do finish it, I can make the rest of you laugh as well. So from the bottom of my soul, I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas, and here's to a new year, new dreams, new accomplishments, and hopefully some damn good new video games.